Hey everyone, today I'm talking about PMS on T with an ND. And I'm going to start by explaining a little bit about how to tell which type of PMS you have and some of the options that you have available to help you cope with it and or heal it, ideally. A lot of women have PMS almost every day in my clinical practice because I focus on women's health. It comes up, and it often doesn't come up as the very first reason women book in. So they'll book in with digestive issues, or they're maybe having migraines, or they're feeling exhausted and they just want to feel better. And when we go through the intake, I'll get to the section where I ask about their menstrual cycle, and they'll say, yeah, I have really bad PMS. I have anxiety or depression that week before their period, or their breasts are enlarged and they feel awful, but they just say, that's normal. Everyone has it. There's nothing I can do. But that's just not true. If you're suffering with PMS, there's a lot you could try. And whether that's naturopathic medicine or allopathic medicine, there's a lot of options. So just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. So the four types of PMS that women can experience are PMS A, D, C, and H. So PMS A is the anxiety type. So these women will often say that, that 7 to 10 days before their period, they start getting anxious. Maybe they're losing a little bit of sleep. They're thinking, kind of anxious thoughts, like worst case scenario. And they start to get a little sensitive, especially to criticism, which is fine, but it's just sort of like that is very heightened. And that type of PMS is often related to some hormonal imbalances, and it can also be related to issues with cortisol. So if you are sort of somewhere on the burnout spectrum, if you've been extremely stressed and your nervous system is just not working as optimally as it could be, and cortisol is a problem, it can show up as some anxiety with your PMS. PMSD is depression. And so that's when women will say, that week or 2 weeks before my period, I get really tired. I'm lacking motivation. I feel almost like a little bit of brain fog and confused. And for those women, I'll often do extra testing to look into their thyroid, because if your thyroid is not optimally functioning, it can show up then as that lethargy. And then sometimes there's some nutritional issues as well. PMSH is the like hydration one. So that's when you get like extreme bloating, like that kind of overall body bloat where the jeans don't fit and sock lines there, and you just kind of feel like ugh in your body. And so the hydration piece can definitely be associated also with hormones, and definitely nutrients as well. The adrenal glands can play a role with the hydration type of PMS, because the adrenals help to regulate not only cortisol, but also aldosterone, which is another hormone that affects how our water is moving through our body. And the fourth one is PMSC, which is cravings. And that's when, a lot of women will say like they just eat everything in the fridge, that week before. They feel like they don't have any control over their food choices. And so that type of PMS can definitely be associated with hormones. It can be associated with neurotransmitters, especially serotonin. So if serotonin is a problem, it can affect the craving situation. And also, if you're kind of in that burnout stress state, the cortisol connection can affect how your body is craving certain foods. And the neurotransmitter serotonin can also really affect if you have PMSD or A, so that kind of anxiety or depression state. Now, obviously, these four types of PMS can all overlap. You can have all four, you can have just a few, but kind of doing an intake with a practitioner that can kind of help you to understand, what your symptoms are and what they may mean, can help to support what type of treatment you might want to look into. Medically speaking, a lot of MDs will prescribe either antidepressants or a birth control pill. So the antidepressants are addressing the neurotransmitter issue, and the birth control pill is essentially regulating your hormones, or giving you hormones, giving your body hormones so that it kind of overrides what your body was doing before taking it. when you see naturopaths, a lot of times it's, as I said, a really thorough intake, looking at your diet, your lifestyle, stress, and then understanding which type you have. So there's a lot of different options to support hormones. So for example, chaste tree is a really common herb that naturopaths use, and it's been researched to help support with a wide variety of PMS symptoms. And then there's other nutrients like calcium and B6 and magnesium. And those are all given in specific doses for specific types of PMS. So I wouldn't necessarily run out and buy all of these at the health food store without talking to somebody first, because you may not need some, or you might need more of one than the other. And then depending on the client too, like if I have a client that is, 3 kids at home, obviously, especially now with the pandemic, everything's really stressful. And so if I feel like they're kind of in that burnout state, and maybe we either do some testing or just symptomatically, I'll add in some extra supports for the nervous system, which can then help with the cortisol link to the cravings and the anxiety or the depression. So if you are having symptoms that 7 to 10 days before your period, that look like breast tenderness, bloating, maybe you're snappy at your partner, or you just want to jump in your car and drive away from your kids, or if you are feeling like you need to eat all of the donuts all at once, and just having like any of those types of symptoms. A lot of times women think PMS is just kind of the mental, emotional aspect, but it's obviously everything, the physical too. And then the last piece that I look at with clients is that mind-body connection. So in that week before the period, everything's sort of raw and a little bit more on the surface. And I'd like to explain that to women, that it is a sacred time for you to kind of peek under the hood emotionally, so to speak. So if all month you've been going and doing and surviving and living, but that emotional piece, the emotional side of you has not necessarily had some kind of attention, or if you've been stuffing things down that have been coming up for you, that's the time when it can bubble up, because your defenses are down a little bit. And it is an opportunity for you to kind of take stock of where you are and maybe do some processing, maybe reach out for extra supports. There's lots of different psychological supports, there's healers, there's energy healers, there's so many different ways to help you to kind of process if there's big things coming up, if there's some smaller things coming up. It's really just a time for you to reflect and maybe do some journaling, and just think about what you might want to change for the month ahead. Just kind of like a little recalibration for your mind and your body. So if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And please know that it is important to seek out some help before you take anything. I have so much more to say on this topic, but I'm trying to keep these short. So I have not had any tea yet, but in theory, this is Tea with an ND. And I will see you next week.